Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll be covering parts 7 to 10, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. Now, without further ado, let's begin the story.
And right now, he was next on the Demon King's abduction list. Before regression, Burge had fought countless dwarves, but this was his first time actually visiting their city. He bribed the guard at the entrance with human gold and casually asked for the best blacksmith around. The dwarf smirked, pocketing the coins. For a human, you know how to do business. Burge completely suppressed his demonic presence, masking his identity. With a bribe that's small, directions came quickly. Head into the city, find the huge hole, take the lift. They'll check your identity and assign a floor. Two-step security, no intruders allowed. But Burge didn't need verification. He simply dropped down to the lowest level. From there, he walked toward the deepest chamber, the heart of Wulfner. That was where the legendary lawyer Frederick worked. The first thing Burge noticed was the man's technique. The metal shimmered. With mana so fluid it looked like the flames themselves were dancing. For a moment, Burge wondered, is this really the best blacksmith? Well, he could always confirm after kidnapping him. He reached out, fast as lightning, to grab the dwarf and escape. But his target was far from ordinary. A wave of fire roared toward him from Loya's forge, swallowing Burge in searing heat. The dwarf didn't hesitate. A massive hammer swung toward Burge the next second. That flame, there's a hint of demonic power. Suspicious. Burge blocked the hammer with one hand, bones cracking from the sheer force. Are you a hero? He asked calmly. Loya lifted his chin proudly. I am a hero. How dare a demon enter dwarven land? You will not leave here alive. Burge grinned, his trademark Demon King smile. For all that bragging, you're pretty weak. Also, correction, I'm not a demon. I'm the Demon King. With effortless strength, he slammed the hammer into the ground and grabbed Loya by the throat, lifting him off his feet. Guards rushed toward the chamber after hearing the commotion, only to find it empty. Panic erupted. A demon intruder, Lawyer Frederick, kidnapped. High above them, on a terrace, Burge warned his captive, make a sound and I'll kill you. Still trembling, Loya demanded an explanation. Why is the Demon King here of all places? Is it the princess you're after? Burge waved off the idea. He had no interest in dwarven royalty. Instead, he asked about their secret. Underground passages, routes only. Blacksmiths knew for emergencies. Loya assumed this was exactly how the princess would be kidnapped. And honestly, he couldn't stop Burge even if he tried. The truth was simple. He talked big, but Loya was terrified of Demon Kings. Still, he refused to answer. So Burge leaned in and whispered, fine, I'll kidnap your princess, then release you. It'll look like you betrayed her for your life. Imagine the rumors, the shame, the torture. That broke him. Everyone already knew he wasn't courageous. If such a rumor spread, no one would doubt it, and his life would become hell. Burge gave him one final choice. Walk with me, or sell out your princess and pray. Loya stayed silent, but inside, he was plotting how to escape while still handing over the princess. A greedy little schemer. To seal the deal, Burge made a vow. On the Demon King's standard, I guarantee your safety if you cooperate. To dwarves, that oath was sacred. A Demon King would never break it. Instantly, Loya's attitude flipped. Confident, obedient, almost cheerful. Burge nearly gagged at the sight. Meanwhile, deep inside the city, Princess Louise Worft paced anxiously. Loya had vanished while crafting her weapon, and although guards explained he'd been taken, her worry only grew. The guards insisted Loya had been kidnapped, but Princess Louise snapped at them. Shut your mouths. He's a hero too. How could a hero possibly be kidnapped? One guard nervously tried reasoning. Your Highness, he is a hero, but he's also, well, a terrible fighter. That earned him a death glare. Find him, now! If you fail, I'll take all your heads myself. No one argued after that. Jar. Meanwhile, deep inside Loya's hidden tunnel system, Burge was losing patience. The passageway was narrow. So narrow that the Demon King had no choice but to walk behind the dwarf the entire way. Too close. Far too close. Move faster, Burge growled. If I have to stare at this disgusting view any longer, I'll burn this tunnel down. Loya laughed nervously. Wait, just a moment. These tunnels weren't made for tall people. Finally, after what felt like hours, they emerged outside the city. Loya dusted himself off with relief. Well, that's all. My job is done, so I'll be going now. But Burge shifted into his demonic form, wings spreading like a shadow swallowing the moon. What nonsense are you spouting? Loya froze. You swore on the Demon King's standards. Burge shrugged. Trash vows don't matter to me. Just like that, Loya officially became the newest victim on the Demon King's rage bait list. Panic hit him instantly. Maybe selling out the princess would have been smarter. Wait! I'm useful! No one can rival my metallurgy. I can craft anything you want. Burge frowned. How does a hero so easily offer to work for a demon? Loya didn't care about morals anymore. Survival over pride. So Burge gave him one final order. Swear loyalty to me. Loya immediately smashed his forehead against the ground. Yes, I swear! Thank you for your mercy. Of course, in his head, he was already planning his escape. Too bad plans don't matter when you're unconscious. Jar. Moments later, Loya woke up surrounded by spirits in a serene garden, confused, dizzy, and terrified. Gordon was already pacing around him. You kidnapped a hero? A dwarf hero! Burge motioned for silence. Then Bernada appeared on a floating screen. My lord, did you seriously bring a dwarf inside? Burge cut him off. Report later. Princess Grenada ignored the chaos and walked straight up to Loya, studying him calmly. Did you come to rescue me, hero? She paused. Probably not, right? Loya still couldn't process what was happening. Why am I here? You said you'd keep me safe. Burge smirked. That's why you're still breathing. I knocked you out and carried you here. I couldn't trust what a small, panicking dwarf might do. Loya forced a laugh. Stiff, awkward, desperate. Right. Wonderful. Burge didn't waste time. Your first assignment, install a large number of cannons on the first floor. If any heroes come, I want them obliterated. Loya swallowed hard. Cannons. Right, of course. The scene opened at the hero's journey preparation station. A holographic communication link flickered to life as an external. Grenada delivered his report. With practiced calm, he informed his superior that rumors were spreading rapidly among the heroes. According to the latest intelligence, the newly emerged Demon King was believed to wield black flames. In response, the heroes had begun equipping themselves with fire-resistant gear, preparing for what they believed would be inevitable combat. Grenada continued, adding that yet another rumor had begun circulating. Many heroes believed the Demon King had refrained from deploying demonic beasts out of fear. From their perspective, his continued silence was interpreted not as strategy, but as weakness. Vergdila listened to the report without any visible reaction. His expression remained indifferent, his posture unmoving. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat and dismissive. He remarked that the heroes clearly had not lost their whether they were driven by the pursuit of glory through battle or by the promise of wealth through conquest, it made no difference. None of them, he declared, would gain anything from this journey. In the end, they would lose everything, eventually even their desire to fight. Before ending the holographic call, Vergdilas issued a final order. Grenada was to continue monitoring the heroes closely and report any changes without delay. Grenada acknowledged the command and promptly cut the transmission. Left alone, Vergdilas reflected inwardly. By deliberately withholding demonic beasts, Vera was quietly eroding the heroes' morale and distorting their expectations. More than that, it was becoming increasingly clear that this Demon King possessed an unsettling understanding of human psychology. Barry wondered if there had ever been a Demon King like him before. The thought sent a rare chill through him, followed immediately by genuine relief. Vergdilas was not his enemy. The scene then shifted. Vergdilas tower. Within its cold halls, Vera issued a terse command to Lager Friedrich. Fire cannons were to be installed on the tower's first floor. However, he imposed one critical restriction. Mana stones were not to be used. Lager panicked instantly. He argued that constructing such weapons without mana stones was nearly impossible, and that even if completed, they would be ineffective against heroes. Vergdilas off sharply, his tone brooking no resistance. Finding a solution, he said, was Lager's responsibility. Vergdilas went on to explain that heroes were favored by the dimension itself, granting them extraordinarily sharp energy perception. Any trap powered by mana stones would be detected long before it could be activated. That was precisely why mana stones could not be used. Lager attempted to protest again. Vergdilas' expression darkened. Calmly, a sphere of black magic formed in his hand. He reminded Lager that he had been brought here because he was regarded as the greatest blacksmith. If Lager failed to meet expectations, Vergdilas shortage of others who could replace him. Terrified, Lager broke down. His voice shook as he hastily claimed that there was another method. Vergdilas responded with a chilling smile, remarking that Lager should have mentioned it sooner. Lager explained that he had once invented a device capable of completely concealing mana traces. Developing it had taken 3 full years, but the finished prototype still remained in his workshop back in Wolfner. Vergdilas' face hardened immediately. He demanded to know whether this claim was simply another desperate excuse. Crying and trembling, Lager swore that he was telling the truth. After a brief pause, Barrett chose to believe him, but not without insurance. He fastened a purple rune-etched collar around Lager's neck. When Lager asked what it was, Vergdilas explained casually that it was a magical restraint capable of separating his head from his body instantly, activated with a single gesture. With a thin, ominous smile, Burge realized that the collar also distorted perception, preventing others from clearly seeing Lager's face. If Lager ever attempted to remove it, Barrow would interpret that act as his chosen escape, and death would follow. Understanding the situation completely, Lager collapsed in fear. He swore that no matter what happened, he would never attempt to remove the collar. After issuing his orders, Barrett departed alongside Lager. Together they traveled across several kingdoms to procure rare supplies and mana-compatible materials. The journey lasted nearly a full month. Throughout that time, Burge stored everything they gathered inside his spatial pocket, carefully preserving each material needed for his preparations. Once their task was complete, they returned to Wolfner, the dwarf kingdom. Inside the city, chaos had already taken root. A massive boulder suddenly crashed down near a group of dwarves, shattering stone and sending debris flying. At the center of the destruction stood Princess Louise Verf, her fury unmistakable. She shouted that it had already been a month and a half, yet the dwarves still had not found Lager. She berated them for their incompetence, and demanded to know how much longer she was expected to remain patient. An elderly dwarf stepped forward nervously. He explained that Lager had dug countless underground tunnels over the years. Their forces were investigating every passage, but it was highly likely that Lager had already escaped the city. Louise snapped back immediately. Of course he would have fled, she said. It would have been idiotic for him to remain behind. She declared with certainty that Lager had been kidnapped. In a sudden outburst, she grabbed the old dwarf by the face and lifted him off the ground. Coldly, she announced that she would grant them 2 weeks. If the kidnapper was not found by then, every one of them would die. Terrified, the old dwarf swore they would succeed. Louise released him and barked orders at the soldiers, commanding them to collapse every tunnel Lager had ever created. The dwarves scrambled to obey without hesitation. As the soldiers rushed off, the focus returned to Princess Louise. It was clear that her physique was anything but ordinary. At that moment, a hidden section of the wall shifted silently. One of Lager's secret tunnels slid open behind her, its mechanism almost soundless. Louise immediately sensed the disturbance and spun around, her eyes narrowing in sharp focus. Due to the face recognition interference mask, she could not identify the figure who emerged from the passage. Even so, she instantly recognized the tunnel itself. Her voice rang out coldly as she stated that only Lager knew of such hidden passages. She demanded to know whether the man standing before her was him. Lager froze in place. Panic seized him completely, and after a brief struggle, he barely managed to utter her title in a trembling voice. Louise cracked her knuckles, fury flashing across her face. She barked angrily that the bastard had dared to return alive. A furious smile spread across her lips as golden vines of aura flared violently around her body. She accused him of going into hiding because he did not want to forge her weapon. Tears streamed down Lager's face as he desperately denied the accusation, insisting that she had misunderstood everything. His words only fueled her rage. She snapped back sharply, reminding him that she was a princess, and accusing him of insulting her by claiming she was mistaken. With absolute authority, she declared that from that moment onward, he would be her slave, bound to forge weapons for her for the rest of his life. Golden aura surged around her fist as she drew it back, stating that before anything else, she would punish him for running away. Before her punch could land, a violent blast erupted between them. Princess Louise was hurled backward through the air. She slammed into the ground, but immediately steadied herself, planting one hand down and regaining her balance with ease. Dust billowed outward before slowly settling. When visibility returned, Burge forward calmly. He instructed Lager to retrieve the equipment at once. Louise glared at the newcomer, unable to discern his identity due to the interference effect. She demanded to know who he was and why he was helping a dwarf. He responded in a flat, emotionless tone, introducing himself simply as the master of the blacksmith she had just been extorting. Princess Louise leapt into the air, rage blazing across her face. She shouted that the blacksmith was her slave and would forge her weapon for the rest of his life. The two collided mid-air, their fists meeting at terrifying speed. Shockwaves tore through the surrounding space as each exchange sent ripples of force outward. In the midst of the relentless barrage, Burge suddenly spotted an opening and swung his leg toward her neck. To his surprise, Louise caught the strike mid-air with one hand. Speed. Shockwaves tore through the surrounding space as each exchange sent ripples of force outward. In the midst of the relentless barrage, Burge suddenly spotted an opening and swung his leg toward her neck. To his surprise, Louise caught the strike mid-air with one hand. The sheer strength behind her grip caused his eyes to narrow. Burge could recover. Louise countered with a brutal punch. The impact sent him flying upward, crashing into the ceiling above. above. She turned her head slightly and coldly informed Lager that it was now his turn. That was Burge reappeared. He seized Louise by the head and slammed her downward. The two immediately began exchanging blows at terrifying speed. Shockwaves rippled through the chamber as debris was hurled into the air. Their clash resembled a battle between seasoned monsters rather than mortals. Era recognized her instantly. She was the second daughter of Princess Vere. Though not officially a hero, her strength was exceptional. Even before his regression, Louise had been among the strongest individuals. He had known, far stronger than she currently was. He calculated quickly. If she were allowed to grow any further, she would become a serious threat. Killing her now would be the logical choice. However, doing so would require unleashing his full demonic power. In his current weakened state, that was a dangerous gamble. If her soldiers witnessed his true strength, his identity as the Demon King would be exposed. Their fists continued to collide in blinding exchanges of golden and violet energy. In the background, Lager worked desperately, dismantling a massive structure piece by piece. During a brief opening, Burge sped toward him, demanding to know whether everything was ready. Lager replied in panic that he was still dismantling the device, a massive mana phantom machine, designed to erase and conceal mana traces. The mechanism was far larger than he had anticipated. Burge snarled that if Lager valued his life, he had 1 minute to finish. Lager swore frantically that he was moving as fast as possible. From the opposite side, Louise's aura flared violently. 12 blazing streams of golden power erupted from her body as she demanded to know who had given them permission to act. Burge glanced toward Lager and stated flatly that if the situation worsened, he would abandon him without hesitation. Pale with terror, Lager promised that he was nearly done. Burge clenched his jaw. He had no idea how long he could continue fighting without tapping into his full demonic reserves. Every passing second pushed him closer to exposure, as both their mana outputs collapsed at terrifying speed. Louise shouted that she did not care where Bear had come from. He would not leave this place alive. She then turned her fury on Lager, declaring that she would break his legs so he could never escape. Again, Burge laughed darkly and remarked that she sounded more like a demon king than he did. He told her to give up, stating that he was taking both her, blacksmith, and all the equipment with him. At that moment, Lager shouted that the dismantling was complete. The instant the machine was disabled, the flow of mana shifted violently throughout the chamber. Louise snarled that she would no longer hold back if Lager believed he could simply return and steal what belonged to her. Burge opening drove his foot straight into Louise's chest. The blow sent her crashing downward, smashing into the ground as a violent explosion tore through the chamber. Without hesitation, Burge opened his subspace pocket and ordered Lager to move immediately. Louise rose from the dust, declaring that such attacks were meaningless against her. However, her words faltered when she realized that Burge, and the machine were all gone. Moments later, her soldiers arrived, asking what had happened. Louise scoffed at them, calling them slow and asking whether they intended to arrive only after she was dead. She ordered them to pursue Lager through the tunnels at once, then she stopped. The tunnels had been collapsed, grinding her teeth. Louise finally realized the truth. Lager truly did not intend to return and forge her weapon. A cold smile spread across her face as wind swept through the ruined chamber. She declared that the situation was far more interesting than she had expected. With burning eyes and a twisted grin, she swore that she would personally hunt him down, even if she had to scour the entire continent. And when she found him, she would make Lager regret everything he had done. Inside the first floor of Breeze J Tower, the Demon King stood before a massive magical apparatus. His posture was calm, his gaze unwavering as he carefully examined the structure towering before him. "This is the magic we need to stop the hero," he stated firmly. "No matter the cost, I require this device." Behind him, Princess Hildurin, the first princess of the Hildurin Kingdom, widened her eyes in disbelief as she took in its sheer scale. "It's enormous," she murmured. Nearby, Logar, the Demon King's loyal servant, tilted his head in confusion. "What exactly is it supposed to do?" he asked, sounding unsettled. "I was in the middle of cleaning when all of this suddenly started," gesturing toward a reinforced structure installed beside the tool. Logar straightened and reported, "The Mana Phantom's framework is complete. Installation has finished successfully." The Demon King gave a brief nod. "Good. Activate it immediately." "Yes, my lord," Logar replied without hesitation. Moments later, the Demon King released his dark energy. A terrifying purple aura burst forth, spreading throughout the floor as oppressive pressure filled the air. His voice turned cold. "After everything it took to bring this here, it had better be worth it." Logar visibly trembled under the demonic presence, but forced himself to answer. "The activation is already in progress." As the enchantment concluded, the magical tool roared to life. Mana surged violently through the surroundings, and blue lightning wrapped itself around the tower, illuminating everything in its path. Princess Hildurin raised an arm to shield her eyes. "The light, it's blinding." At that moment, a translucent system screen appeared before the Demon King. System notification. The tower has recognized the Mana Phantom. Synchronization requires 10,000 points. Proceed? The Demon King lifted his gaze to the screen. So the tower has such a function, he muttered. Very well. I'll confirm it myself. Another display appeared, showing his available resources. Available points 11,182. He selected synchronization without hesitation. Synchronization complete. 182 points remaining. A final notification followed. System update. The Mana Phantom has recognized the Demon King as its master. Processing complete. The Mana Phantom's power source has been fully converted from mana to demonic energy. The protagonist lifted his head and called out to Logar. Logar, brimming with excitement, immediately shook his head in denial. He insisted that he had not interfered in any way. With barely contained enthusiasm, he admitted that he had never imagined it would be possible to merge the Mana Phantom with the tower, let alone convert its power source entirely. He declared it a discovery of the century, something even the device's original creator could never have foreseen. At that moment, Princess Hilderin stepped forward. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she gazed at the awakened structure. This is incredible, and eagerly agreed, clearly delighted by the opportunity to test what felt like a brand new toy. I'll use whichever spell I want then, she announced cheerfully. She began chanting, magical symbols forming in the air as a massive, vividly colored sphere of magic took shape before her. Logar's face instantly drained of color. Wait, he shouted in panic. I just finished cleaning the tower. He desperately begged her to stop, warning her not to treat the place like some kind of playground. The protagonist, however, ignored the commotion and focused on the phenomenon itself. A spell of that magnitude should normally be detectable far beyond the tower's walls. He moved toward the entrance and peered outside, only to frown slightly. He could neither see nor sense any trace of the spell beyond the door. So this is the effect, he muttered. A tower synchronized with a Mana Phantom. Curiosity stirred within him. He extended his demonic energy outward, attempting to manipulate the tower in its current state. His hand shimmered, and his expression shifted to shock as the tower vanished completely from existence. A moment later, he spread his arm once more. Instantly, the tower reappeared exactly as before. Realization struck him. I can conceal the tower whenever I wish, he said slowly, and summon it back at will. The implication alone was astonishing. A faint glimmer of demonic energy flickered in his eyes as a restrained smile formed on his lips. Using this power freely is still difficult for now, he concluded calmly, but it will become invaluable in the future. Meanwhile, outside the inner chamber, Logar could no longer restrain himself. His voice echoed loudly as he begged for permission, insisting that he only wanted a small opportunity to examine the device. His excitement quickly escalated as he blurted out a request to dismantle both the magical tool and the tower before hurriedly correcting himself. I mean examine them. Purely for research purposes, Logar declared that he had never encountered anything like this in all recorded history, whether past or present. He begged for permission to study what he called a historic discovery, his behavior bordering on outright frenzy. The protagonist watched him with a sharp, assessing gaze. You sound like a demon itching for battle, he remarked. Even so, he could not deny how completely Logar had lost control of himself. After a brief moment of consideration, the protagonist gave his answer. Very well. If you completely wipe out the heroes trapped on the first floor, you may do as you please afterward. Logar's eyes gleamed as crimson energy surged around his body. I will crush those cunning heroes without mercy, he swore. Without another word, he immediately began chanting, fully immersed in what he considered his examination. Leaving Logar behind, the protagonist turned toward Princess Hilderin. In a calm voice, he proposed that she confront the heroes who had managed to reach the fourth floor. Princess Hilderin froze. Me? She asked, clearly taken aback. But I'm a princess. There was a note of protest in her voice, though it sounded more playful than truly offended. You are also a gifted spirit, the protagonist replied evenly, and you have no intention of returning to the royal palace. Even as he spoke, he acknowledged the weight of his decision. Assigning her such a role might be unreasonable. She was still an innocent princess, unfamiliar with the world's cruelty, and asking her to stand against her own kind carried undeniable gravity. Princess Hilderin fell silent, uncertain of what she could even fight with. Fire? Water? The possibilities flickered through her mind. The protagonist stopped her before the thoughts could take root. That won't be necessary, he said. All you need to do is disrupt the heroes and openly reveal yourself as their enemy. If this succeeds, I will grant you another wish. She met his gaze, her expression serious, and slowly nodded. I'll do it, she said, then added a condition. But introduce me as your subordinate, not as a princess. The protagonist blinked in brief surprise, then accepted without hesitation. Very well. Princess Hilderin's face lit up instantly, her joy resembling that of a delighted kitten. Thank you, she said brightly. I'll do my best. She blinked playfully and added, So, am I supposed to charm the heroes with my looks? I'm sure they'll fall for me. No, the protagonist interrupted flatly. Do exactly as instructed. She nodded obediently. Understood. Some time later, the protagonist sat in silence, his attention fixed on the system screen hovering before him. As he studied it, he reviewed the preparations already set in motion. The first floor would thin the heroes' numbers through overwhelming mass mana cannon fire. On the fourth floor, Princess Hilderin would act as bait, drawing the survivors in so they could be finished off. Even so, he found the plan lacking. With more than 200 heroes advancing, this strategy alone would not eliminate even half of them. That left only one remaining option, strengthening himself further. His gaze shifted to the radiant treasure resting in his hand. Dense demonic energy coiled around it as it shimmered faintly. He recognized it as an icy water elemental spirit blossom, a flawless creation in his eyes. Spirit blossoms corrupted by demonic energy were especially potent, effective even against demons themselves. He resolved to acquire more of them. Elsewhere, Princess Hilderin stood within a land of endless snow and biting cold. She scanned the frozen surroundings before sighing softly. "There's nothing here either," she said. "What should we do next?" "This is already our third attempt," the protagonist replied. "Perhaps our earlier success was nothing more than luck." Princess Hilderin nodded faintly. "It does feel strange." At that moment, a towering figure suddenly appeared before them. The protagonist instantly raised his arm, dark energy gathering around it as irritation crept into his voice. "Have you come back again?" he asked coldly. "I'm growing tired of these interruptions." The massive man let out a deep, rumbling sound and bowed his head. "I am Crioto of the Blue Forest Tribe," he announced respectfully. "I greet the Demon King." Lowering himself even further, he pleaded, "We have come seeking your protection." The protagonist regarded him with an icy stare. "Are you asking to be taken in as my kin?" At once, the gathered tribes fell to their knees. Their leader spoke on behalf of them all. "Our ancestors were once demons who betrayed the demon realm. Because we bear that original sin, we ask to be granted the honor of serving you, Demon King." The protagonist looked down at them with a cold, unyielding gaze. "Enough with the flattery," he said flatly. "You seek to grow stronger by becoming kin of the Demon King." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You are better suited to demonic energy than relying on spirit blossoms." An orc elder turned to his subordinates and gave a slow nod. "Our intentions have been seen through," he admitted. "There is no reason to hesitate any longer. Bring it out." A box was opened before them. Inside rested a grim lotus, its dark petals sealed within a casing of icy frost. The protagonist's eyes sharpened as he recognized it instantly. "So that's why it eluded us," he muttered. He glanced at the orcs again. "This was prepared in advance. You even know how to negotiate." A faint hint of amusement entered his voice. Unusual, for a tribe known more for brute force than intellect. The orcs lowered their heads. "Survival in this land demands wisdom above all else. Our tribe values intelligence more than raw strength." The protagonist handed the box to Princess Hilderin before turning back to the orc tribe. "You came to me because you lack strength," he said calmly. "You seek power." The orc leader listened intently, not daring to interrupt. A faint smile curved the protagonist's lips. "Wisdom over strength," he repeated. "I like that mindset." Raising his hand, he began to chant. "I will accept only one," he announced. "Crioto." In the next instant, a demonic sigil materialized and embedded itself into Crioto's body. Dark power flooded the snowy field as the protagonist spoke once more. "Roam the land. Expand your tribe under my authority," he continued, his voice unwavering. "Await my orders. I will grant you a reward greater than mere strength." His gaze turned absolute. "Your tribe will gain permanence under my rule." Demonic energy engulfed Crioto completely. His body twisted and reshaped as he transcended, becoming a true demon. Crioto fell to one knee and bowed deeply. "I offer my life and loyalty to you, Demon King." Behind him, the rest of the tribe followed, kneeling in unison. Boy, the scene shifted. At Algest Mountain Tower, power surged through the entire structure. Outside, an orc legion assembled in disciplined ranks. On the first floor, Logar stood prepared alongside 60 mana cannons. The protagonist reviewed the battlefield within his mind. The orcs were positioned exactly as planned. The tower's floors were secured, and Princess Hilderin waited on the fourth floor. Even so, tension lingered. He confirmed each stage once more, before finally nodding to himself. Everything was in place. Raising his gaze, the protagonist's dark eyes hardened. "I will repay the humiliation of my previous life," he declared silently to the approaching enemy. Elsewhere, the hero gazed up at the towering mountain and spoke to Granada. "We've finally arrived." Algeist Mountain loomed before them. The heroes advanced, stepping onto the battlefield with a single goal: to slay the Demon King. At the hero's journey preparation base, a magnificent city stood as the starting point for countless legends. Within its grand central hall, a lavish banquet was underway, held in honor of the heroes before their departure. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses as warriors and dignitaries celebrated the eve of their final march. Among them, a young hero clad in polished armor stood in conversation with the elderly Lord Castellan. The Lord smiled warmly and remarked that the hero was far too modest for someone of his accomplishments. The hero respectfully thanked him for hosting such a splendid banquet. Lord Castellan replied humbly, saying it was an honor to witness and be part of such a historic journey. The hero merely nodded and thanked him for his kind words. After a brief pause, Lord Castellan suggested that the hero Lord Hillen should address the crowd. Hillen hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the idea, but the Lord insisted, explaining that everyone was waiting and that it would greatly boost morale. Seeing no way to refuse, Hillen reluctantly agreed. Seizing the moment, Lord Castellan immediately turned and loudly announced to the hall that Lord Hillen wished to speak. All eyes shifted toward him. With the attention of the entire hall upon him, Hillen cleared his throat and stepped forward. His expression became calm and composed as he prepared to speak. He addressed everyone present, his fellow comrades, heroes, nobles, knights, mages, mercenaries, and merchants, acknowledging each group with respect. He declared that their long expedition was finally approaching its climax. With confidence, he boasted that their march for justice had terrified the Demon King so thoroughly that not a single monster had dared to block their path. The hall erupted in laughter, and confidence surged through the crowd. Hillen quickly reminded them not to let their guard down, assuring them that every possible preparation had already been made. His voice grew louder and more resolute as he proclaimed that tomorrow would be the day they took the head of the foolish Demon King. Raising his glass high, his words burned with righteous fury as he demanded to know who would dare to kidnap the Princess of Hildren, Princess Ern. He roared that it was time to remind the world who they truly were. With a final impassioned shout, he declared that they would show everyone who the true masters of this world were. The hall exploded in thunderous cheers. Cries for justice echoed from every corner as the crowd followed Hillen's lead, raising their glasses and shouting for everyone to eat, drink, and celebrate. Watching the chaotic celebration from a distance was Granada, the elf. Calm and observant, he noted that just as the Demon King had predicted, the size of the expedition had not increased. However, it had not decreased either. Reflecting on the speech, Granada acknowledged that Hillen's charisma was the reason the expedition had come this far. Hillen had secured funding from the guilds and kept even the wavering mercenaries firmly in line, yet Granada could not ignore his unease. He remembered that the last tower he had investigated was completely empty, making him wonder if the final confrontation would truly be this easy. A dark and treacherous thought briefly crossed his mind. Should he backstab the heroes now? He froze in panic and immediately berated himself for even thinking such a thing. He quickly reminded himself that if the Demon King was successfully subjugated, he would finally be freed from his curse, a future that clearly benefited him. Shaking his head, Granada forced himself to regain control. Determined to clear his thoughts, he decided to step outside for some fresh air and send a report. Later that night, beneath the glow of a full moon, Granada stood alone on a high balcony, quietly communicating through a faintly glowing device in his hand. From the other end, a calm voice reported, "We have arrived at Horton Walk. We will rest briefly and begin climbing the mountain tomorrow." The voice on Granada's device replied shortly, "We will rest briefly and begin climbing the mountain tomorrow." The voice on Granada's device replied shortly, "I see." Then it issued a strict command. "Once you leave Horton Walk, do not contact me again." There was a brief pause before the voice spoke once more. This time it was unmistakably the Demon King, Burge. His tone was firm as he delivered his final warnings. He instructed Granada to beware of the snow while climbing the mountain, and to remain vigilant at night. His last warning was the most cryptic of all. "Finally, when the tower door opens," the Demon King said slowly, "never be near it." The connection ended abruptly. Granada stood frozen, completely baffled by the strange warning. He muttered to himself, unable to understand its meaning. Suddenly a voice sounded behind him. "What are you doing out here alone?" Startled, Granada jumped and quickly turned around. Helen had appeared silently behind him, trying to steady himself. Granada explained that he had only come out to get some fresh air. Nervously, he asked if something was wrong. Helen studied him for a moment, noticing his tense expression. With a relaxed smile, he offered Granada a drink, a fruit wine known to be a favorite among elves. Granada accepted it gratefully. Taking a sip, he felt the warmth ease his nerves. Helen casually remarked that Granada seemed troubled and asked if he believed they could truly succeed in subjugating the Demon King. He followed the question with a light laugh, teasingly asking if Granada was nervous. The elf hesitated. "Yes." "Well," he replied softly. As Granada spoke, Helen stared into the surface of his own wine, his reflection wavering. His cheerful expression slowly faded. In a quiet voice, he admitted, "Actually, I don't know either." Granada was taken aback by the sudden honesty. Helen gazed into the distance and continued, explaining that although people trusted and followed him, assaulting a Demon King's tower was always hell. It had never been easy, not even once. Trying to reassure him, Granada mentioned that Helen had already defeated the Demon King of Lust. He implied that a newly emerged Demon King should not be as dangerous. But as he spoke, a realization struck him. Nothing was actually known about how Helen had killed the Demon King of Lust. With a curious smile, Granada asked him to share the story of that heroic victory. After a brief pause, Helen avoided the question. His expression shifted once more, returning to that familiar heroic charisma. He claimed that his victory had only been possible because of his brave comrades, those who always stood at the front and faced the monsters head-on. He then turned toward Granada and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Comrades like you, Lord Granada." With renewed confidence, Hillen declared that he would take the lead in the coming battle, and asked Granada to guard his flank. He ended with a confident smile, saying that if they fought together, victory was assured. Granada returned the smile and nodded. "I will do that." Satisfied, Hillen wrapped an arm around him and said, "Now let's go back inside." The two walked toward the banquet hall, the hero leading his elven comrade. Hillen's expression was calm and unreadable, hiding the true nature of their alliance. Later, alone with his thoughts, Hillen reflected on the conversation. A cynical smirk crossed his face as he murmured, "Of course." Joined forces with brave comrades. His gaze fell upon a ring set with a red gem. In that moment, his heroic demeanor vanished, revealing something far darker beneath. His true thoughts surfaced clearly. "I'm counting on you this time too, Elf Granada." The next morning, the preparation base was already bustling as the massive expedition finally prepared to depart. As the heroes began their march, the city's citizens lined the streets, their cheers echoing loudly through the air. They shouted words of encouragement, wishing the heroes good luck and praising their leaders. Cries of "Long live Lord Granada" and "Long live Lord Wharton" rang out from every direction. At the head of the procession, Granada marched with a calm and stoic expression, his gaze fixed forward. Beside him, Hillen walked proudly, soaking in the admiration of the crowd with a confident smirk. The cheers grew louder, reaching a fever pitch as the people began chanting, "Long live Lord Hill Cargill." Soon, the expedition left the city far behind. The cheers faded, replaced by silence as they entered the harsh and unforgiving Urust mountain range canyon. Snow-covered cliffs stretched endlessly around them, and a biting wind cut through the air. The massive force snaked its way through the desolate landscape, the cold their only constant companion. As they traveled deeper into the mountains, some members of the expedition began chatting among themselves. Their earlier worries slowly faded. One person remarked that the weather was surprisingly mild, with barely any snow and even a clear sunny sky. He confidently concluded that reaching the tower would be easy at this pace. Another agreed, smiling as he said that the goddess of victory must be watching over them. A large warrior laughed loudly, pointing out that there were no signs of the rumored disaster-class monsters. His companion smirked and replied that the monsters were probably too frightened to appear now that Helen was leading the expedition. As the smug warrior continued boasting, his companion suddenly tapped him on the shoulder. When he pulled his hand back, it was covered in a strange, sticky purple slime. Confused, the warrior slowly turned around. Towering over them was a massive ghoul. Terror exploded through the ranks. Warriors screamed in panic. One shouted desperately, "There's a ghoul!" His face was twisted with fear. Another pointed at the monstrous figure and yelled in disbelief, "What is that?" "Look at the size of it." Their confidence shattered instantly, before chaos could fully consume them. Hillen's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. His eyes were filled with determination as he drew his sword. "They finally showed up," he declared, with the entire expedition force on high alert. Hillen issued his order. "All forces prepare for combat." Ghouls began pouring into the canyon from all sides. Standing firm amid the chaos, Hillen shouted, "Do not panic! Protect your comrades!" Quickly assessing the battlefield, he formed a plan. The canyon was narrow and not very long. The knights would shield the mages and push forward, breaking through the enemy line. The battle erupted as steel clashed against undead flesh, and magic lit up the frozen canyon. Suddenly a warrior screamed a warning. "Lord Hillen! Lord Nim! A frost giant has appeared at the front." Hillen froze as a colossal skeletal monster made entirely of ice emerged from the canyon wall. Its sheer size stunned everyone. Without hesitation, Hillen shouted for everyone to fall back. Turning to Lord Wharton, Hillen spoke decisively. He declared that he would handle the frost giant alone, while the rest of the expedition escaped the canyon together. Wharton stared at him in shock, questioning whether Hillen truly intended to face such a massive monster by himself. Hillen's reply was calm and confident. "No problem." Without another word, he leaped forward. A powerful wave of blue energy crashed into the frost giant, but the massive creature remained unmoved, completely unfazed. Hillen charged again, his movements a blur as he confronted the towering monster alone. The frost giant's crimson eyes glowed with terrifying power, its skeletal form looming ominously against the white snow. A confident grin spread across Hillen's face. In his mind, he scoffed. After all, a frost giant could not possibly be stronger than the demon king of lust. With a thunderous roar, the frost giant swung its gigantic arm downward, bringing it crashing toward him. But Hillen was ready. He countered with a powerful upward slash. The force of his blade shattered the frost giant's icy arm, sending violent shockwaves rippling through the canyon. The monster roared in pain and fury as its attack was completely neutralized. Without giving the frost giant a moment to recover, Hillen pressed forward. When the creature swung its remaining fist, Hillen effortlessly shattered it as his sword, crackling with blue energy, carved through the giant's massive frame. He stood firm, a beacon of raw power, relentlessly assaulting the colossal beast. As Hillen kept the frost giant fully occupied, his eyes flicked toward the rear. He saw the perfect opening. Gathering his strength, he unleashed a final, devastating flurry of slashes, completely overwhelming the monster. Then he turned and bellowed at the top of his lungs, "Do it now! Everyone, run!" The expedition force did not hesitate. Warriors, mages, and mercenaries surged past the embattled hero and the stunned frost giant, fleeing the treacherous canyon. As they ran, Lord Wharton echoed Hillen's command, shouting at full volume, "Run away!" Behind them, a massive explosion erupted, a violent testament to Hillen's power as he continued to hold the frost giant at bay. Wharton urged his comrades forward, screaming that Hillen had blocked the path, and that they must seize this chance to escape. Left behind, the frost giant glared after them with glowing crimson eyes. Its skeletal body was heavily damaged, yet it still radiated menace. Rage poured from it as it watched its prey slip away. Denied its victims, the frost giant let out one final furious roar. Then its body collapsed inward, self-destructing in a colossal explosion that shook the entire canyon. Having escaped the immediate danger, the surviving members of the expedition stumbled into a nearby snowy forest. They collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, their bodies trembling from exhaustion and shock. One warrior, still shaken, muttered in disbelief, "Dozens of massive ghouls, and a frost giant taller than a cliff. This place is insane. It's not fit for humans." Another nodded grimly, adding that even the Demon King's tower had not been this intense. A third pointed out that, despite everything, their casualties were surprisingly low, and credited their survival to Lord Hillen's overwhelming strength. The discussion soon turned to the source of Hillen's power. One soldier mentioned a rumor that Hillen had absorbed the power of the Demon King of Lust after killing him. That idea quickly spread, leading many to conclude that Hillen must already be on par with a Demon King. One warrior went even further, suggesting that since Hillen had already slain a Demon King once, he must be even stronger now. The thought lifted their spirits. Confidence returned to their faces as they agreed that as long as they trusted Lord Hillen, there was nothing to fear. Listening to their renewed faith, Granada could not help but think to himself, really, if it is Lord Hillen, he might actually defeat that Demon King. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted. Ahead of the expedition stood a new threat. A tribe of massive blue-skinned orcs blocked their path, led by a towering chieftain with curved horns. The hero's journey was far from over. As the heroes struggled to catch their breath, Lord Wharton spoke grimly, his voice heavy with urgency. "There is no time to rest." Granada narrowed his eyes as he studied the figures blocking their path. He immediately recognized them. "These are Frolorcs." Hillen's expression hardened. He could feel it as well. "There's demonic energy coming from them," he said coldly. "They're servants of the Demon King." The orc chieftain stepped forward. His massive frame loomed over the battlefield, muscles rippling beneath blue skin. His name was Cruel. A cruel grin spread across his face as he addressed the heroes, his voice a low, mocking growl. "Foolish heroes," he snarled. "Welcome to Ursist." Lord Wharton scoffed, gripping his weapon tightly. "I'll take care of trash like you right now." He was about to charge when Granada suddenly raised his hand. His sharp elven ears caught something unnatural, a deep, distant rumble. "Wait, Lord Hillen," Granada said urgently. This sound, the rumbling grew louder. In Granada's mind, the Demon King's warning echoed clearly. "Beware of the snow." A look of horror spread across Granada's face as understanding struck him. "Don't tell me." "This is what he meant," he whispered, his eyes widening in fear. The orc chieftain, Crew, stared down at the heroes with a cold, predatory gaze. "None of you," he declared with absolute certainty, "will reach the tower." The ground began to tremble violently beneath their feet. The rumbling intensified as cracks spread across the snow-covered mountainside. Snow and ice shifted, groaning under their own weight. The sound of an avalanche filled the air. As the mountain gave way, Granada screamed in terror and frustration. How the hell were we supposed to be aware of this? In his final moment of clarity, rage overwhelmed him. He cursed the one who had orchestrated this nightmare. "You crazy Demon King bastard!" he roared, his voice swallowed by the thunderous collapse of snow and ice. The disaster struck. A massive avalanche tore down the mountainside, burying the entire expedition in an instant. Snow and ice swallowed warriors, mages, and heroes alike, dragging them into the frozen chaos. As he was swept away, Granada's face twisted in sheer terror. With the last of his strength, he screamed, "Everyone, run!" But his cry was drowned out, crushed beneath the overwhelming weight of the snow. Far away within his towering fortress, Demon King Burge sat calmly upon his throne. Before him, holographic screens displayed the unfolding catastrophe. One by one, the images of the heroes flickered and vanished. A sinister smirk crept across his face. "Heroes, welcome once again," he said softly, his voice dripping with mockery as he addressed the now static screens. With a wicked grin, Demon King Burge watched the final moments of the heroes screaming in agony. His plan had succeeded flawlessly. Leaning back on his throne, his eyes glinting with cold satisfaction, he made a chilling vow to the fallen. "This time," he whispered, "I will hunt you all down,